and I'm very happy that we have a distinguished panel here to discuss a very new topic for us. This is, as you see over here, Women of Influence, and it discusses 10 extraordinary careers of ladies who have been in the administrative services. I think it's a unique privilege for me to welcome 4 distinguished colleagues of mine, both on the dais and many who are off the dais. So welcome all of you. A little introduction about the CIC. The CIC is a not-for-profit organization. We organize intellectual discussions, and we do almost 3 or 4 events a month. Now, we are trying to establish ourselves in our own premises. We have got a land in Mylapore, where we hope to build a center which will be like the Delhi India International Center. And we hope to also get into some social activities as part of the CIC. So it's basically what we like to call ourselves is we are a spa for the soul. And we invite distinguished achievers from various walks of life to come and share their experiences with us. With that introduction about CIC, let me get to today's speakers. Well, we have a distinguished colleague, Rajni Sekhri Sibal, who is an IAS officer of the Haryana cadre. Incidentally, she is the first lady to have topped the All India Civil Services examination in 1986. She superannuated as a secretary to the Government of India, and she is presently on the board of directors of Star Health Insurance. She is advisor to SCAI and IEM with SEBI and Exim Bank, besides working for a safe childhood with Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi's Children's Foundation. Rajni is the recipient of the Indian of the Year 2013 award in the category Unsung Hero for her courage and courage. Apart from this, apart from a successful career, she is also an accomplished author, and she has several publications to her credit. Clouds End and Beyond, an anthology of verses. This was her first publication. This was followed by Kamadhenu, a coffee table book published by Wisdom Tree Publication. Then came Are You Prepared for a Disaster, on the disaster risk reduction topic. Then Fragrant Words, an anthology of poetry. The Haunting Himalayas, a book of short stories set in the Himalayas. Asariri, a mystical novel. The Guru, a recording of fascinating life experiences encapsulating the rational and sagacious worldview of Guru Nanak Ji, related from one generation to another in the oral tradition over the last 5 centuries. And today's book, which we are going to discuss, Women of Influence, 10 Outstanding IAS Careers. It is again a pleasure and an honor to welcome Rajni. Welcome to CIC. We have Maithili Sundar, another achiever, who is a former associate editor of The Hindu. She has been associated with The Hindu from 1999 to 2018. As a freelancer between 1996 to 1999, she has contributed many articles on human rights, women and children, including Slice of Life, to leading publications, the Indian Express, the Times of India, the Hindu, the Aside, etc. She has also been a faculty at Asian College of Journalism, Chennai from 2019 to 2021, teaching writing to students of print journalism. She has also handled classes on Indian Constitution for police officer recruits and has taught political science in Central Law College, Salem. Well, her accomplishments go on. She has an MPhil in South Asian Studies from JNU. She has done her MA in International Studies from the same university and holds a degree of BA Political Science and a postgraduate diploma in journalism. She had been on the resolution committee of the International Federation of University of Women, IFUW. She was also the National Secretary of the Indian Federation of Universities Women's Associations affiliated to the Graduate Women International, GWI. She has presented many papers on women's issues in the triennial conferences of GWI and Asian Federation of University Women, some of which include paper on impact of intercaste marriages on women, paper on female infanticide, etc. We have pleasure in welcoming you, Maithili. Vivek is a well-known figure. Today I'll use Vivek, sir. No, sir. He is an IAS officer, a senior of mine of the 1980 batch, was the former chairman of ELCOT and ex-IT secretary to the government of Tamil Nadu. As the secretary to the government of Tamil Nadu Information Technology Department for nearly 4 years, he was solely instrumental in ensuring the software exports grew from 2,000 crores in the year 2001 to over 10,000 crores in 2005. During the period, new companies were added at the rate of one company every 3 days in Tamil Nadu. He had his training in some of the most prestigious institutions in India and abroad, including the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Institute of Financial Management and Reconstruction, and the London School of Economics. He has held various prestigious positions like Collector of Tanjavur, the CMD to various government corporations like Salt, Tea, Cooperative, Milk, Federation, IT, etc., and Secretary to various departments. He has successfully managed and resolved issues involving technology, social conflict, human resource development, infrastructure provisioning, political, economic, and financial resource allocation. After 27 years of distinguished service in Indian Administrative Service, he took voluntary retirement and worked for a few private sectors undertakings as MD and CEO. He has recently started his own venture called 10X Consulting Private Limited. 10X provides consultancy services to companies, NGOs involved in human capital development through training, skilling under various national initiatives such as Skill India, Make in India, and Renewable Energy, etc. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome to CIC. And we thought that there has to be a balance. We can't have an all-women's panel, so we put the cat among the pigeons too. Dr. Malini V. Shankar is our fourth guest. And she's a distinguished civil servant, also features as a protagonist in this book, a career bureaucrat belonging to the 1984 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. Malini has had an illustrious career spanning over 3.5 decades. Her last assignment was the Director General Shipping in the rank of Secretary to Government of India. She is currently the chairperson of the National Shipping Board, Government of India, and a member of the government-appointed Board of Directors of the IL&FS companies. I think we missed out your current assignment, which is the Vice Chancellor of the Indian Maritime University here in Chennai. She has obtained her doctoral degree in Institutional Economics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, Management degree from the Asian Institute of Management, Manila. She holds a master's degree in chemistry from Mount Holyoke College, Massachusetts, USA. She had a professional mid-career training at the Institut International, let me just leave that, IIAP. It's a French word which I can't pronounce. And a large part of her career at the senior level has been spent in the water sector, in municipal administration, irrigation, environment, and economic sectors, that is power, commerce, and industry shipping. Dr. Malini Shankar has been recipient of several academic recognitions. In recognition of her professional achievement, she has been invited by academic and professional organizations to contribute to policy making and representing India in international fora. Most recently, she has been selected as one of the 7 global recipients of the AAA award by the Asian Institute of Management, Manila, Philippines. She is the first Indian woman to receive that award. So that is our distinguished panel, ladies and gentlemen, and I will not stand between you and them. So the floor is totally yours. Vivek, sir, take it away.
Well, thank you, Mauli, for that very lovely introduction. And we'll get straight into talking with these three rather very distinguished ladies. They're extra. 2 of them are featured in this book. One of them is the kind of person who could have written this book. And what I will do is I'll break tradition. Normally, when you do a book review, you start with the author. but I think I'll break the tradition. And let's start with the journalist. So, Maithili, now, you are part of that very significant four pillars of democracy, as we call. I mean, we are part of one of them, being the executive. Then there's a political side, there's a judicial side, and then you represent all the other sectors, which is the silent sectors, you may call them, NGOs, which is the press. Now, but there are a lot of similarities. I think there are a lot of similarities between the administrative service and journalism. We land up in terrains which we just don't know about. You land up in situations you don't know about. This book, which of course Rajni will be talking, all of us will be sharing, is talks about the lives of and the achievements of 10 extraordinary ladies. But I want you to share something about some few extraordinary ladies from journalism who walked that extra mile, who were heroines, and who just did not take things for granted, but did things differently, all other situations remaining the same.
Thanks so much for inviting me here, and I'm very happy to be here. I would like to go into the differences. They look the same, but the challenges are not the same. They're quite peculiar to each profession. And I'll just be talking about it in a course of my conversation with you. So when I read this book and I knew that it was about women in the administrative service, I just did a little bit of homework. So I would like to begin with the tale that I am sure must have become legendary in the Indian administrative service, especially for women. The experience of the first woman IAS officer, Anna Rajam Malhotra. The experience of hers, she joined the service in 1951 when the terms of appointment had a clause that she would have to quit if she got married. She made the government relent and went on to marry her batchmate and retired after an illustrious career. In another incident, also in the 1950s, a woman got selected to the Indian Foreign Service, but had to give up the opportunity because she wanted to marry a colleague, a fellow journalist who rose to the position of ambassador. So for one Anna Rajam, there must have been at least 5, a very moderate figure, who became victims of the discriminatory, arbitrary, sexist rule. Fast forward 7 decades, the recent picture in the media of Divya S. Iyer, district collector of Pattanamthitta, Kerala, who brought her baby boy with her to a function, triggered a debate, with many pointing out to the impropriety of her act. Thankfully, some people defended her, saying her act only spoke of the multitasking women do at work and home. From Anna Rajam to Divya Iyer, women have certainly come a long way. But the intent behind the employment clause that wanted women IAS officers to quit their jobs upon marriage, and those criticizing a woman officer for bringing her child along to a function 70 years later remains similar. A woman can be a wife and a mother or professional. She cannot be everything. It was not just in the IAS, this is just for information, that women faced an uphill task. Cornelia Sorabji, the first woman law graduate from Bombay University and first woman to study law at Oxford University, was the first woman advocate of India. She cleared the pleader's examination in the Allahabad High Court in 1899, but could not practice law because women were barred from practicing till 1923. Okay? So in a society that is skewed in favor of men at home and workplace, it was inspiring to read about the exceptional work of the 10 women IAS officers spanning over 5 decades. Women of influence indeed. A special word of appreciation is due to the author, Rajni Sekhri Sibal, for not only telling us about the achievements of the 10 protagonists, but providing the background and context in each instant. The geography and social currents of Bikaner, the detailed data on pulse polio, the meaning and relevance of inquest, the challenges of an officer facing conducting local body elections, and so on, have been conveyed beautifully in a narrative and descriptive style. Thankfully, the book avoids the bureaucratic language. The episodes read like a story and help the reader connect with the protagonists and their environs. Coming to the challenges and untold stories of women journalists, which is what I'm expected to talk about today, I must say this. Generically speaking, the challenges appear to be the same for women in all professions. Gender bias, reluctance of men to take orders from women bosses, sexual overtures, slut shaming, and so on. But look closely, and you will find issues peculiar to each profession. Like the bureaucracy, journalism also involves long hours, traveling to remote places, and uncertainty about the results. One may go looking for a source which may just not materialize. But some important differences are women journalists are on their own once they are on the ground. No guarantee of a decent place to stay, food, toilets, even physical security, especially at public rallies. Those of us who began our career in the 1980s and 90s faced more or less the same environment. Women were rarely given important or sensitive assignments. No political or crime beat for them. It was too risky. They did not work on the news desk or night shifts and rarely ran the edition. They were typically expected to cover education, social, and cultural beats, what were called soft stories. Even legitimate rights of women were treated as privileges by male colleagues. I mean this, huh? I remember how some men in my newsroom would whine about women colleagues shirking work, within quotes, shirking work in the name of pregnancy, childbirth, menopause, and so on. The patriarchal mindset reflected every word and action. In fact, I know of a woman, a very famous woman journalist, who miscarried because she worked too long into her pregnancy. There was also the risk of being exploited and so on. Many women journalists have shared how, when they went abroad with official delegations, they had to take extra care to remain safe or were very uncomfortable when their sources asked to meet well past evening. The biggest challenges that the journalists of my generation and before me was to break the stereotype and strive to be taken seriously. I would like to talk about just two stories among the many that I did as a freelancer, very briefly. I wrote for the... Okay.
Yeah, I will come back to you for the stories. And well, thank you. Back to Rajni now.
Okay.
And Rajni, I'll just read a few portions from this book, which I find very, very, what should I say, interesting and very interesting. And I'll just read from your book. I don't want to be misquoted, which is MIS, not MISS. So let me just go ahead. For some of you who may have not read this book, first of all, let me tell you that copies of this book are available outside. And Rajni has been very, very kind enough to say that she would sign books for those who have got books and would like to buy them. And this would be signed by the author. So such of you who have like to buy the books and get them signed by Rajni herself, well, she's here for you. This book is not a statement on gender or an attempt at establishing one-upmanship. Every woman of influence in my book is bright, focused, courageous, and has worked diligently over and above the call of duty. As the author of the book, I do not want to put my heroines on a pedestal. It is not my intention to portray that the protagonists in the book are perfect. No one is. Now, I'll just spin off on something on this. Now, in this imperfect world with imperfect people, how did you even think of something like putting this book together? I mean, I know the tenor comes from the beginning. When you start your book, say, I have often, she says, he starts a book by saying, I have often wondered why some stories do not get told. And I'll come back to you for your stories. So, Rajni, would you like to tell your story?
Thank you. Good evening, seniors, ladies, gentlemen, colleagues, aspirants. I see a lot of you wanting to come into the IAS. Happy to be in Chennai. I love Chennai. Good to see so many faces. So why did I write the book? In fact, as you rightly read, the book begins, the author's note begins with the words, "Some stories never get told." Uh, there are books of this kind, about people who've done very well in the civil services, in the IAS, uh, but they are all about their autobiographies mainly, um, about men. I haven't seen a single biography or autobiography about women in the IS. And they're little in the face. They're, I did this and I did that. And uh, important people who've obviously done some good work and written about it. But Malini is one of the protagonists. There are 9 others who are across India, as you rightly said, from Rajasthan to Arunachal Pradesh to Maharashtra to Karnataka to Haryana, well, across India, as I said, who have walked that extra mile, who've actually made difference to people's lives, who had less than perfect knowledge about any situation, but came out with the best results and found solutions within that time space, but never talked about it. In fact, something very common about all of them, when I started to, you see, this is not just 10 women I picked up randomly. There were about 62 stories I got in. I wrote on a group, which is the Secretaries of Government of India group. I also associated myself with Labasna, with other places, and asked people to let me know about women who've done a good job. And it took me a while to pick the ones I wanted to pick, basically covering different geographies, different genres, different periods. One begins in 1965, the latest in 2016, the occurrence. Uh, each one of them, the common thread was, said, look, I don't want to talk about myself. I'm happy to share my work. I'm happy to talk about the problem itself, the solution I found, how I arrived at that solution. But it's not about me, it's about the work. And that I found fascinating. There were some who didn't even want their name, the full name. So if you notice, in the book, I have actually only used the first names. And that, in a day and world where people do so little, but want to be in the press, want to be in the face, want to be seen by everyone, is a big thing. Obviously, these are women who are special. Why I wrote the book? Wow, this takes me back to a day during COVID when we were all shut in, watching TV interviews. And there was this very acrimonious TV interview. I will not say who the journalist was, but he was very loud, very, very acrimonious. And the whole end all of the talk was whatever is wrong is due to the IS. So it's not raining, it's the IS fault. It's whatever. So my children, like everybody else's children, have been through a lot. They've seen me through thick, thin, through problems, through threats, through all kinds of things, as would have yours and everybody else's. So my daughter turned around and told me, she says, Ma, this is really unfair. The world out there has the IAS as a whipping boy. And I know we've seen what you've gone through. We've seen what you continue to go through. Why don't you change the narrative? Somebody needs to change the narrative. That's how the book was born.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. Rajni and I had a long conversation, but she has this innate capacity to change the weather of Chennai. The last time, this book we were supposed to discuss, she landed a whole cyclone on Chennai, and therefore the program got postponed. And this time, for the last 3-4 days, we've not seen the sun, but thankfully, there's not been cyclonic. Okay, but there's a line which really caught my eye. In the some sense, I think Mali also talked about the fact that the journalist on the street is completely alone, and you are there by yourself. Similarly, in the civil services, and I am also part of it, I mean, you are, first of all, given a team about which you have no control. Your subordinates are not what you choose. Your positions are not what you choose. Your responsibilities are not what you choose. So, one short question again to you, Rajni. You've mentioned your motto as the, Akla Chalo. Akla Chalo, and you mentioned about if this was the file. I don't want to mention the foreign language part of it, but if this was the last file that I would be seeing in my career, or if this was the last decision that I would be taking, how would I take it? How does it feel?
Okay, so one is definitely borrowed from my dad. The other I kind of picked up later. So my father was a juvenile diabetic and kind of knew that he died very young. He passed away when he was barely in his mid 50s. So under his table used to always have a saying, "Al timer for san," which is Latin for perhaps the final hour. I have that same handwritten note wherever I go. I put it under my table as well. Now, for me, it's never been, I mean, I'm not so philosophical to think that, oh, I may die tomorrow. But for me, it's always been within the IAS, you get moved like that. You don't even know when you're posted out. So each time there was, you see, between the black and the white, it's very easy to take a call, very easy to decide that the white is right. But in areas of gray where you can actually, uh, you know, you have discretion, one, and in another occasion where you have a lot of pressure, uh, CM wants it, somebody else wants it, whatever, there's lots of pressures on you. Very often, Alzheimer Forsan has helped me. So it's like if I tell myself, this is the last file I do in this office. Would I like to, what would I like to do? Often in the court, if this is the last decision I take, what would I like to do? Well, those of you youngsters who are sitting there and want to join the IS, adopt it. It makes a lot of sense, right? Uh, the other, as you, is a life experience. What happens is that within the services, you're virtually on your own. And if you genuinely believe in what you're doing, if you actually believe in doing the right thing, uh, you're up against a lot of pressures, a lot of difficulties. And that's the time you realize, Akla Chalo. It's actually Rabindranath Tagore's Bengali, Jobi Tore Dakshine Kyu Na Ashe, Tabe Akla Chalo Re. If nobody follows the path you tread on, walk it alone if you believe in yourself.
Which is actually, yeah, we could all have mics. Okay. Uh, but this book, when I was reading this book and I started talking to these people, there were so many threads that kind of just got woven into my life. And one, of course, was Anna George. Anna George was also sub-collector of the same subdivision of which Molly and I had the distinction of being sub-collector Hosur. And we kind of followed her. But it was also reminded me of my own mother. My mother, and Leena knows that, my mother was a 5 gold medal winner from the Lucknow University in MA Economics and in 1948-49. And she wanted to write the IAS, but she was also deeply in love with my father. So the choice was whether to choose Joseph Harinarayan or to choose the Indian Administrative Service. And as my name rightly suggests, I mean, she chose Joseph Harinarayan. But she was so bright, she told me, Vivek, I would have given it in writing to the Public Service Commission that if I don't get in the top 5, I'll not join. But that's the story. I mean, that's how life is. And the other one, of course, is Mahindargarh. And I would, before I go to Malini, I'll maybe, tell you a little bit about Mahindargarh. My wife is sitting here. Mahindargarh was the first city that Sangeeta and I visited after we got married. And it is such a remote place. And the train reaches the station at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were just married and like a Nai Naveli Dulhan, like in red clothes with all her bangles and all those things. Sangeeta and I got off the platform and there was no one on the platform, just us. And that typical, the train kind of goes off and one bent guy with a light in his hand comes and he was the station master. And we were there to visit my batchmate, Ashok Lavasa, who was then the sub-collector of Mahindargarh. But we had this very eerie experience at night. But here with me is another lady officer in a very dear friend of mine, Malini, who's had this very eerie experience herself. So it's not exactly 8 o'clock, it's 6:46. But how do you deal with a knock on the door at 8 o'clock at night? Tuck, 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 tuck. Go ahead, Malini.
So this was way back in late 1980s. And the district was Chandrapur. It was called Kala Pani. Um, Absolutely out of anywhere. Naxal infested, what we call left-wing extremists today. So I mean, this is a place when I went to the official residence, we had 25 people in this 4-acre plot, one behind every bush, and I didn't know which was a Naxal and which was actually a regular employee. So 1/3 of the district was fully infested by Naxalites. And there were instructions that if you tour in those areas, there were written instructions. You have to go with this posse of policemen, 10-gun carrying policemen, who would follow you in a jeep. And you tour in those areas. Now, these Naxals were against certain departments like PWD and police and irrigation and stuff. So I had to actually change my vehicle in one of the talukas and take the agriculture officer's vehicle if I wanted to go interior, because they trusted people working in agriculture and social welfare. So one of those rare instances where I had to go, I decided to go into the interior areas, and the instructions were you come back at night. But I said, no, I need to halt there because there are long distances. There were no all-season roads, and the farthest village was about 8 hours from the headquarters. Yes, no all-season roads, right? So I said, if I want to visit those all-season roads, I mean, the last village, I necessarily have to night halt. I'll give you one example. Once when I was visiting that area, this is a PHC, Primary Health Center. And because I was a lady officer, the nurses, the ANMs would say, can we talk to you? One time, this ANM said, I don't know what to do. All the medicines are over. If the provisions are over, I need a replacement. Now, these were days the government said, okay, you have 15,000 rupees for the year per primary health center, and that's it. No, we're talking about 1988. So 15,000 was okay for that area. But this was only in the month of August, and the financial year started in April. So I was wondering how it got over in this remote area. Then she tells me the story saying, yesterday somebody came here and he gave me a list of medicines. And he said, I said, how can I give it to you? And she said, and they said, no, you better give it. Otherwise, there's a Sten gun on your throat. So interestingly, she was smart enough. She looked at it and she knew what had happened. There'd been an ambush of the Naxalites in that area. And she was asking me, would you really, what should I do? I said, no, you are a health worker first. You're not part of the police. Your job is not to solve this problem. So please give it. I'll replace it. So it's in that kind of area. So I had finished this visit to the primary health centers and schools, and I was halting for the night in a guest house. And it was, early time. There's no electricity there. So knock, knock. So I said, who is it? It's the police. So, when you work in such a situation, you don't trust the statements that are made. It's a police, anybody can say you're the police. I said, get my driver. Because his voice is the only one I recognize. And there's no driver. He says, no, we are the police. I said, how do I know you're the police? Ma'am, we are the police. So anyway, after this goes on for 5-10 minutes, I said, okay, what the heck? Let me open the door. And there were, in fact, policemen in Vardi. And I said, you get my driver and then I'll talk to you. Because I had this impression that they had tied up the driver, like in the movies, somewhere. Thrown him somewhere. So the driver also comes. And the feeling then is, as I said, first, are these really the policemen, or are they, just coming to check you out? What is it? Because you have instructions saying that you have to go with the police. Where are those 10-gun fellows? And what they told me at that time, again, they said, there's been a problem. I said, what's been the problem? They said, the police escort vehicle which was following you, it has been mined. in a turning, ambushed, and no, there was a mine which blew up, and there were 6 policemen. 5 died on the spot, and the 6th one is in the hospital fighting for his life. We need a dying declaration to be done. And when you work in those areas, the interesting thing is the driver had told me it was around 5:40 sunset time, 5:45, 6, and he just told me kasatari vatta. Ami zauya. Basically saying I'm not feeling well, let's go from this place. Now till today, I haven't asked the driver whether he knew information that a mine had been planted there and we should leave, or whether he really was just saying, not well, let's go. So this is a kind of situation sometimes you work in, and I should say, I should actually say, but for Rajni, these stories wouldn't come out. Like we say, we don't, I mean, where do you go and share those stories? And I'm just one of the 10 here, but I think there are dozens and hundreds of them out there who
Thank
who
you.
face
Thank
that
you,
situation.
Malini. Chandrapur actually means village of the moon. And she was,
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
Because I was in fact giving her this. You know, Malini is a little reticent. I'm not going to say what she's already said about the incident, what happened, and how she had to go and actually do the inquest for the. You had to actually check out and take the dying declaration for the last person who died. What happened against his backdrop is what I want to read from the book, if you permit me. Malini had joined service against his backdrop. Around the time she had joined, the elected body had been dissolved. Hence, she was also made administrator of the Council of Chandrapur. A month after she started working, the Secretary Rural Development and Maharashtra minister came in from Mumbai. He was aghast to find her posted there. And he said, "Which idiot posted you here?" She calmly responded, "The government, sir." He said, "Well, the government must make amends then with the law. You, a young girl from Tamil Nadu, all on your own in Kalapani, that's not fair. And why did you not protest when they posted you here?" To his surprise, Malini said, "I'm happy to be posted here, sir. I'd rather not go back to Bombay as you want me to." So he asked why. Anyone would jump at the offer. And she turned around and said, which is something I don't know how many people would after having seen what happened. And there was also an incident which you must read the book to actually find out what else happened. But she used to get threatening letters in blood. Okay? So despite that, she said, "Chandrapur has remained backward for too long. A great deal needs to be done here, sir. In the last 1 month, I've come to understand the people and the place. I want to work. I'd like working here. Please do not transfer me out." I would like to
fabulous.
make
Give her a big hand. Thank you. Thank you, Malini, and thank you, Rajni, for
claps
that.
for you, Malini. And she is one such great heroine. There are 9 others. I just felt these stories needed to be told, right?
Okay, so I had promised to come back to you, and we've heard these stories now. Would you like to share? You mentioned about 2 stories, which are equally, complete, whichever way. I mean, you're an outstanding lady. You're allowed to stand and speak.
I'm in standing lady now. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you good standing.
see, these stories we did when I was a freelancer, because I had, I was just out of the journalism school at that time. See, I started off as a teacher and then drifted into journalism. So I began journalism quite late. So there was a report in 1998 that the Mahabalipuram police had detained 38 Bangladeshi children, accompanied by a few adults, who were waiting to be transported to the UAE by some local agents, allegedly for being used in camel racing. This was the report. Some people had been arrested. So the IE told me to follow it up. So I set off. You must remember I was a freelancer, and when you are a freelancer, you don't even have anything as such as the identity card. There's nothing. You just go and say, "I'm from this, and you do it. Okay? So the group, along with another freelance photographer, who is also a woman, we went to Udavum Karangal, which is an NGO, where these people had been sheltered. So the age group of those who were there was from a 2.5-year-old child to some adults. They lied to us. Thankfully, they spoke Hindi, so it was not a problem. saying they had been illegally detained and they just wanted to go to Dubai because they wanted a very good education for their children. They were not even related to the children, okay? So slowly, the story unraveled, exposing the huge network of agents and procurers in human trafficking across India. It was not just Chennai. They had been arrested in Bangalore, they had been arrested in many other places. Then what happened was, interestingly, we got information from a source in the prison department that the kingpin was being presented in the court, which was in Kanchipuram. So we went from Udavam Karangal to Kanchipuram to the other end of the city to find out what had happened. We interviewed him and we also got the photograph of that person, and it was a very, very significant story which was carried very well by the Indian Express. So another story was about left-wing extremists who were thought to be, neutralized in Tamil Nadu. But then we got a tip-off, again as a freelancer, that there were some of them. So I went to many parts of Tamil Nadu to interview them. They still believed in armed revolution. They still believed in that. So the risks which were associated with this, I need not tell you. We were freelancers. So we didn't even have the backing of a media organization. I'm not saying that a media organization immediately steps into your defense. It's not always the case. But here we didn't have even that. And then I would like to talk about Vidya Subramaniam. I'm sure you've all heard about her. She's a very senior journalist. She's done excellent stories. So when she was working for the Indian Express, she did a story in Lucknow on a sati death that had taken place. No, this was not that important sati story. This was another one. She had to swim her way. Swim in the sense she had to really walk very deep into the water and reach that place. There she saw the photograph of the woman sitting on the funeral pyre with her relatives looking on. So she told the family, Sati Mata ki jai, and I'm a great follower of this Sati Pratha, and this story needs to be told. Imagine a woman with just a photographer. She goes there, and you know how patriarchal that society is, even today, the North. So if they had found out what she was up to, what could have happened to her is anybody's guess. She managed to get the story. She managed to get a copy of the photograph which was hung in their newsroom. See, now situation is different. What women do now, you also have, ways of getting back to your office, telling them where you are. They can keep an eye on where you are and things. There was no such thing in those days. We just got a call or we just, walked up. There was no way to get back and tell people that, look, I'm in danger, take me out. As a kuch nahi tha. We were really, but we did it. We did this and we did break the stereotype and show the world that, look, women can do serious journalism. You don't have to, I'm not putting down soft stories. They also need to be done by people. But we also proved, some of us, especially people like Vidya, Smita Gupta and many other journalists about whose names we don't know. See, because of electronic media, some names are very famous. They are doing a very good job. I'm not saying no. But these were the trendsetters. They were the ones who went out and said, look, we can do it. Vidya had to fight with her editor to get this post, to do the stories.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing some of those very, very brilliant stories, but I think that maybe kind of Ekla Chalo may become Ekla Duta Chalo, second time, because I don't think Rajni's stopped with just writing about extraordinary careers of women. In her discussion, in her book also talks about the fact that she's not, you can't stop her. I mean, she's unstoppable in that sense. And she wants to write about men actually, men and women in the services. Then she wants to write about other services. She wants to write about, the armed forces. And of course, when she's for any kind of story which talks about a story which has not been told, she's very happy to tell it. So, Rajni, would you like to tell us something about your other books which you've done, and what are the plans that you have? How many more untold stories which you'd like to share? Something on that. And then, of course, we've got these young kids, and while all this is fine, they would like to be sitting here, as IAS officers. So I think we need to get some questions from them, and then we need to give them some tips on how do they prepare for the civil services.
Okay, may I, before I answer that question, something I've never said before. I see my batchmate sitting here, Swaran, huh? And because we spoke about Malini ji in Maharashtra, how a Tamilian without a word of Marathi was in this place. I think I've mentioned you here without taking your name. And I'd like to read what I said and then I'll talk about the rest of it. It talks of a Sardar, sir. It does. So, while I was talking about the various difficulties you have in life, and, it's a great career, by the way, those of you looking for it, but there are some issues that are there. I have, I am, a civil servant is at the helm of affairs at a very young age. Okay, so they adapt to the environment and adopt the culture of the cadre to which they're allotted, for which they actually have no say in which cadre they go to. I'm charmed when I see a Sikh colleague, because I see him there. I want to say it to him. I charm when I see a Sikh colleague who speaks impeccable Tamil decide to build his own home in a state he had never visited before he was allotted the cadre. He had never come to Tamil Nadu before, and he actually decided to live here with his wife and children and marry them off here and speaks impeccable Tamil. Just as I am about a person from Kerala who's mistaken for a Bengali because he eats hilsa like a pakka Bengali and sings Rabindra Sangeet as it should be sung. Just because
So
you're
big,
there.
big. I can give a little bit of a
applause
hand
you.
for Swaran Singh. Will you stand up here? I mean,
Yeah.
Swaran.
Say it in Tamil.
Tamil சொல்றீங்களா? Oh, by the way, I am also for Rajni's sake. My name is Hari Narayan, so it gets confused as Hari Narayanan. But I'm a pure Lucknowite. I'm a Nawab from Lucknow, and we love this place. We love Tamil Nadu. We love
Wow,
Chennai.
you too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You too.
சொல்லுங்களா தமிழ்ல சொல்லுங்கம்மா தம்பி.
சார் ரொம்ப நன்றி முன்னாடி ரெண்டாவது என்ன செய்யணும் ஐ ஹவ் நாட் ஒன்லி செட்டில் இன் தமிழ்நாடு என்னுடைய பொண்ணு ஹேஸ் மேரிட் ஏ தமிழியன்
ஓகே
ஆனால் அது கண்டிப்பாக அவர் மட்டும் இங்கே தான் தங்கணும்
அப்போ மாமனார் எல்லாம் இங்கே தான் இருக்காங்க
சான்ஸே கிடையாது ரெண்டாவது ஹோல் ஃபேமிலி பீங்க பஞ்சாபி நான் பீங்க பக்கா தமிழியன் ஐ லவ் தமிழ்நாடு ஐ லவ் த தமிழ்நாடு பீப்புள் இவங்க நல்ல பேஷன் இருக்குது கம்பேஷன் இருக்குது கண்டிப்பாக அதை கண்டினியூ பண்ணுறோம் நன்றி வணக்கம்
தேங்க்யூ So Swaran, as you know,
I didn't understand a word of that, but I'm still very charmed. It was very
Mali,
charming.
he said that he said
that's
my
okay.
daughter's married a boy from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
So I love this place and I this thing. And just for your information, I have two children. My son has married a Tamil Brahmin girl, and my daughter has married a Keralite settled in Chennai. So it's a good. Okay.
Good feel
so
across to India.
I'll just back to you, Rajni, in terms of the book, some of your books and plans on future writing.
Yeah, so my books, wow. I put them in three buckets actually. Some are about my work. Some are basically poetry. I write poetry for the love of it. I just enjoy poetry. I've always loved Wordsworth and Shelley and, all of them. And I myself write. So I have 2 or 3 anthologies. About my work is disaster management. The book on Are You Prepared for a Disaster when I was in MHA. I thought everybody must read it because everyone must know what to do if a disaster befalls us. The second was, of course, Kamadhenu when I was in Daring. And these books I call my COVID books. So during COVID, we were all in very small spaces. It was also around the time when I retired. And I had a lot of time on my hands. So I could have just sat back and said, oh my God, what do I do? I did the next best thing. I had a lot of thoughts which I had never really put down in writing. Women of Influence, I told you what happened. It came out of that. The Guru is something that, these are stories that my Dadi, my father's mother, my paternal grandmother would tell me when I was a child. And they've been passed on for the last 550 odd years in the oral tradition from one generation to another. Have gathered a little moss, some magic, some myths built up over the years. I removed some of it, dated a lot of it, checked up on facts and then put together these for the first time. They're called Guru Nanak Sakhis. Guru Nanak, ladies and gentlemen, is possibly the most sagacious, the most rational, the most scientific worldview, which is so relevant in today's day and age. I'd love for you to read it if some of you are interested. The other is Asariri, one of my favorites, and the Haunting Himalayas, because I come from the hills. The mountains kind of are very close to me. Asariri is the Upanishads in a novelette, but told in a easy to understand manner, which makes sense to the people of today. That's the books I've written about what I intend to do. Just like this Women of Influence, as you rightly said, with Penguin, I've signed up a contract to do 2 more. One is of both men and women of all services, not just the IAS, civil services. And the third one is about armed forces, 2 of the Navy, 2 of the Army, stories of people who walk that extra mile, and a lot more. There's a lot.
Thank you. She's, she's just so. I mean, basically, I think it's the heart's desire to be able to tell about things which have not been told. Malini, you've shared about what you did in, Chandrapur and those very, and she actually wept, when she heard about the fact. And now she's taken up, as Mauli mentioned, as she's the Vice Chancellor of the Maritime University as you go down beyond Little Chennai. And when I spoke to her about her job over here, and I see that retirement has made no difference. I mean, and she's still kind of, Vivek, there's so much to be done, yeah. I mean, even in a new assignment like this, where would you like to take the Maritime University?
Very clearly, it's a young university, you know that. It's just about 13 years old. So research, my idea is that this university becomes the go-to resource center for everything concerning maritime, whether it is from the public sector, the government, or the industry. It's a very applied field, so it's not basic science. So we need to be relevant to the industry. So number 1 is research. Number 2 is industry relevant, industry interaction and industry relevant research and studies. So the
futuristic stuff.
Futuristic is, yes, futuristic, and to be to be the top university in at least Asia.
Yes. No. I mean, yeah. Go ahead, please.
I have a question of you. Which of the other 9 women actually inspires you?
Each one, I reread the book, okay, before coming here. So each one is set in a different, it has a different setting, and it's a different period also. But if I'm forced to choose one, and I thought I was very moved by the second story, which is Saving Lives, polio. Probably because you have brought out through whatever the protagonist said, the details of how the polio vaccine program was implemented. For example, she says at some point the polio program hit a dead end because it was stagnating. And they were looking at, how many of these people have been vaccinated. So the government looks at the monitoring is what is the percentage vaccination. And then the protagonist turns it on its head and says, but we are looking at it the wrong way. We have to look at who have been missed. Where are the missing people? Where are the missing? And I think, small details like that and carried it through. And the other reason why I'm very impressed with it is not only was something taken up and done, because, but also it has sustained. Yeah. It has sustained over the decades, not just over the years.
India continues to remain polio-free.
Since
2013, 14. 11. Yeah, 13 was...
2011 was the last reported case.
Ruksat. Now, again, I'm a past president of Rotary Club of Madras, and we think we were the ones who, ensured that polio was eliminated from India. But such of those who are part of Rotary or anyone who's interested on, how to make the impossible possible. It's really all about that. How polio was kind of eradicated, smallpox, polio. These are stories, and they are very silent roles that officers have played amongst the bureaucracy, including systems. Now, having said your favorite, I'll tell you, my favorite is the first book, obviously, for reasons that it's about two people who are very close to our families, Mr. and Mrs. Bordia. Anil and Otima were in this thing. My in-laws are from Rajasthan, and Anil and Otima used to play shuttle badminton with my in-laws, Dr. Malviya and Mrs. Malviya. Of course, Mrs. Malviya used to be Anil's partner, and the other way around. And Sangeeta is a very dear friend of mine, their daughter. It's a very rare story of a bureaucrat lady. Would you like to share the story? And the fact that the war and everything into it.
Yeah, so I'd love for you all to read it actually. But Otima Bordia was this one, it's called Winds of War. She was the first lady collector of Rajasthan. And there was this whole question of, can a lady be a collector? A question that Leena is sitting here, that we were asked in Haryana right up to 1996, for 33 long years, there wasn't a single collector who was a woman in Haryana. Okay? Yeah, before Sarla Grewal, that's when undivided Punjab. Once Punjab was divided, we never had a single. Same thing, why, how, what would women do? Well, in any case, what she did, she was, although if you recall, during the 1965 war, Pakistan, the army and the Hurs, they had actually come into India and taken over some of the villages along the border, both in Jaisalmer, Jodhpur. In Bikaner, she ensured that the wartime effort was planned in May. The actual fighting, the war occurred in September, October, right? And she had planned for water. So Bikaner was one place where everybody was safe. It was also a place where she ensured that every woman in the year 1965 started to take off their veils. It was a big thing, ghungat, So the ghungat kadkar, they would come to her office and she would say, don't do it in front of me. And it's a huge social movement. So
don't tell the rest.
I won't tell the rest. I won't tell the rest.
These, as I said, these are stories about IAS officers, but they are more intriguing, more exciting than any kind of James Bond or any kind of books that you would read. So I would encourage all of you, in fact, to pick up a book, and as I said, nothing like getting it signed by the author herself. So you could do that. Now we have children from various aspiring academies of Chennai who are looking forward to becoming IAS as a career. Would you? Some of you would stand up and introduce yourselves quickly, and if you any questions to anyone in the panel, please. Yeah, anyone else also? Anyone from the audience would like to ask a question? Yes, would somebody take a mic to her, please, if you don't mind? Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, since I just wanted to know, so how do you change roles between being a bureaucrat and a writer? Is there a routine that you follow?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I've written since I was a child, written on scraps of paper at the end of a trek with my feet in the water at all points of time while I'm at the end of a long meeting which went on forever. So that's poetry, right? You write whenever. But books about my work, for that I had to be very meticulous, very rigorous. I'm a morning person. I wake up by 5:30. That's the time I write. That's the time I plan, I think, I strategize. And I used to write then every single day of my life. So the disaster management book happened like that. Kamadhenu happened like that. These, I told you, I just went into a trance. My kids had to tell me, Ma, stop. You need to stop for a while, eat something, take a break. But novels and books where you're actually involved, you need your time. But books about your work need to be meticulous.
Add on behalf of Rajni, there's a book that she's written called Haunting Himalayas. I love the book. I really love the book. And she says, okay, how did she go about writing the book? To answer partly to your question is, like she said, she's a hill person. So she heard a lot of supernatural stories about from people in the hills. So she had them in the head, and one fine day she said, she asked other people, do you also, she asked me, she called me, she said, did you have any supernatural experiences? If you, those of us who were born in the 60s, 70s, etc., I don't think there is anybody who believes in ghosts in 2020s, right? But those days we grew up on ghost stories, and the word, and then she built upon them and she condensed them into, I really love that book, Rajni. It's a really nice book, and with a human factor. It's not just story, here it is, it's a ghost. No, there's some lovely, very touching aspects to the stories that are there in the book.
Yeah, you know.
Thank you. One of my favorites too. So the second story is called The Ethereal Call. It's about a mother and a son. The son happens to be a batchmate. It actually happened to him. So that's the time I realized. During COVID, I realized that when a small innocuous virus can actually engage the whole world and put you behind bars, anything can happen. Prior to which, I used to feel only what I can see, what I can do, what I can touch, what I can actually visualize and perceive is the truth. Somebody else's truth was not the truth for me. During COVID, I realized, no, there is more to the world than actually meets the eye. There's more truth.
Okay, anyone on questions from the aspirants now? Okay, by the way, as I said, Rajni is not only top 1986 batch. I don't want to disclose it, but the marks that she got in her personality test, I mean, let's not even, I get a complex, and I thought I was a topper in my batch, but when I heard her marks, I get a complex. So they're feeling shy. So how did you develop a mindset or the personality to even consider the civil services?
Wow. I'll answer that. That poor girl just sat down again. Please stand up and
It's fine, ma'am.
let's hear what you had to say. Come on.
Ma'am, we all know that the speaker was once called chairman, whether it was a woman or man. And later, when we got a lady speaker, she made a reform that the woman speaker was called. It was neutralized. The posting was called as chairperson. So, what else do we need to look in with the woman's empathetic eye? There are few things which a woman can bring changes, or a man with an empathetic eye of a woman. So, what are the things which are left to be done so that we could bring in a change?
I'm going to let Maithili say this. She, and then maybe add a wee bit because the last.
See,
you would like,
there is a general, feeling that you must think like a man to succeed like a man. But that is a very, very wrong thing to do. You have to think like a woman, act like a woman, and succeed like a woman. There is no need for you to compare yourself with a man at all. Because you're... Thank you. So, see, now the thing is, it is important to assert your rights in workplace. Most of the women don't do that. You have to understand that it is not a favor done to you if someone calls you a chairperson and not a chairman. Don't be carried away by all that. I mean, you shouldn't feel that your maternity leave or your leave for menopause or, time out for breastfeeding, all these things are your rights. They are not your privileges. So you really have to unless these things, see, one thing is no man will give you a right. You have to take the right. Nobody gives it to you. This is something I have understood both in my personal and professional life. No one gives it to you when you ask. You just have to exercise that right. So that the men who are working with you start realizing that they're not doing you any damn favor. Okay?
Great. So,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, let me give you some good news because the ones sitting at the back are the ones who are wanting to be IAS officers. Until you join the service, there's a difference. Once you've joined the service, there is absolutely no difference. Rest assured, both good and bad. You're a good officer or a bad officer, independent of your gender. You get decent postings, not so decent postings, independent of your gender. So, and don't even expect to, please, I think I like it that way, to be treated differently, right? That's one. In fact, taking a cue from what Maithili ji just said, I just remembered something that happened so many years ago. It flashed past my eyes. I have to share it with you. I used to do the budget for Haryana. I was in the finance department in Haryana for 2 years consecutively. I did the budget. The second year, our budget was quite different. And I remember that, when the press was sitting like this in front of us, the minister was sitting here, and the three of us joint secretaries who used to work on the budget were sitting together. And somebody just commented, oh, very good budget. It's actually what we needed, kind of thing. And the minister turned around and said, you understand some Hindi? Well, let me translate in English. He said, my men are very bright, very smart. So I looked at him. Actually, the budget was done by me, not by the others. So then he looked at me, he said, no. Ye Mrs. Sibal to, oh, I have to say it in English. Mrs. Sibal thinks like a man. No, so she's a man only. No. Which is, again, so you come across things like that. But by and large, you are treated at par. You will be absolutely on your own. Akla chalo. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you just have to find your own path. Yeah? And I think you wanted to add something.
I think in one word, I'll say your work will speak for itself. You don't have to be aggressive. There's no need to think you're a man or a woman. There have been times, I was there was an irrigation scam in Maharashtra, and then the irrigation department was headed by an IAS by an engineer for 40 years. So when the scam comes, the government has to do something, right? So the first thing they do is look for an IAS officer to redress the situation. People wanted it to be with the IAS, but they said there's a scam, we can't handle it. So it goes around and finally it comes to me and says, will you take it? I refused it once, twice, thrice. Third time I said, okay, fine, people are asking me. But the chief minister said, but she's a woman, And the engineer said, but she is not a Maharashtrian and she's not an engineer. So all this happens, but in spite of that, somebody took a stand and said, yes, you will do it. But if you just keep the IAS and everything aside, I'm going to relate one small incident that somebody mentioned to me, which shows that actually role models start at home. So here you have a lady IAS officer, and the husband is a private sector. Okay, the lady IAS officer's father is also an IAS officer. Okay, but they are working in two different places. The child is 3 or 4 years old. And he's used to seeing the mother bringing files home, doing it, etc. So one day the tata comes visiting and he's got files home and he's doing the files. So the child goes to the tata, and I hope I can do it in Tamil, all of you understand. Says, Tata, nee edhukku file pandra? So he says, why? No, it's my work. Adalla amma dhaan pannanum. Only mothers do files, okay? So, no, fathers and grandfathers don't look at work at home. So this is a role model where children learn from there. So if you're going to distinguish man and woman right there, then at the end you won't have that confidence. It starts right there.
I would just like to add a point to this. See, I don't know how many of you want to get only into the civil services. But if you're planning to get into some other profession, say, as I said, journalism or something in which you are going to be more on your own, I'm sorry to say this, I don't want to start a controversy, but a certain level of security and a certain level of standing is there when you enter the bureaucracy. Now, when you look at journalists, don't look at just those who are working in the cities. There are people who work in rural areas. In fact, there is one, I don't know how many of you know about this, there is one paper called Leher Khabariya, which is brought out from UP by women for women. And it is run in many dialects of UP. It is run in Bhojpuri, it is run. So you don't have, I'm sorry, the maximum that can happen to an IAS officer, if she doesn't or he doesn't do something, is get transferred.
Not really.
Whereas you lose, wait, let me finish. Whereas,
Okay, I think I need to get into it.
Lose your job. You lose your job, and let me tell you, not all organizations are willing to stand up for you.
Okay,
they are
thank
not
you.
willing to vouch for your security. There are many
okay.
other things.
Okay, I think the question was, no, I think the question was more in terms of, are there certain biases still existing in terms of, for the sake, I think it to a way, I mean, the way I've seen it, look, there are different kind of, you're looking at a man-woman kind of bias. I looked at, when I came to Tamil Nadu, I was looking at a Tamilian versus non-Tamilian bias. But let me tell you, I was the district collector of Mr. Karunanidhi's own district. So, and I was the deputy secretary to the chief minister, Mr. MGR. Swaran Singh has held posts which could never have been thought that a Sardar or a North Indian will do it. So I think capacity, capabilities are something which will always be recognized. Some of them will not, definitely. As she said, like it's about the book. I mean, they are, none of them are perfect. No one is. But, and it's only, again, if you look at outstanding careers, it may not have been careers, it also could have been assignments. There are some assignments in which you become extraordinary. There are some assignments in which you're very, very ordinary. So it's a palette. Don't be, I wouldn't not enter any service, either the services like the IAS or journalism or any service, any job. I wouldn't enter it on the basis of what will happen to me if there are biases. You've got to choose yourself. What are you going to be happy in? If you think civil services will make you happy because it gives you that opportunity to put the last man in the line first, and not just put that last man in the line first, but sometimes actually put catch hold of the collar of the person who's first in line and put him last, join the service. If you think stories need to be told about women which have never been told, stories of courage, people who are getting Padma Shris now, could never think of that some years ago. It was only people who were all on page 3 kind of characters. So if you think that you want to tell those kind of stories, join it. But don't join it for the fact that every time you'll get a pat on the back. Sometimes you'll get kicked in your butt. So be prepared for it.
No, you don't get.
So can I
just say a small thing?
because a lot of these kids, and they were all very keen to know about how do you prepare for civil services, what kind of mindset you should have for the civil service. So some of you, if you have that questions, we'll do that, and then we'll have last words from Maithili. Please go ahead.
Just one thing, continuation with what you said. If you read these stories in this book, each one of those stories, the officer has negotiated some support from the superiors and the colleagues, and they can be male, they can be female. So that's one way to. There's a common thread which runs across all stories.
And the people.
The people, of course, but you do need support from your immediate bosses or your colleagues.
Up and down,
one or two of them from the chief minister, from the drivers. So that's how you get your support.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening to everyone present here. Ma'am, it is very inspiring just to hear you all talk. Ma'am, in the book, we have mentioned 10 different stories, but did you notice a common characteristic or value that each woman had that could serve as a source of inspiration for all the women who are trying to excel in their particular fields?
So they're very diverse. Let me first tell you, everybody is very diverse. They come from different backgrounds, academic, social. Different things motivate them. Different things drive them. They also come from, in fact, the manner in which they respond is also different. But there's one common thread. Each one is immensely focused, motivated to do what is right, courageous, committed, and absolutely diligent. It's boringly diligent sometimes, you know. You just have to keep doing the same thing again and again and again to actually be successful.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We have, I'm telling you, these people are not running away. None of them are. Maithili is not running away. And of course, Malini, two of them are from Chennai. One is in Chennai, one is a little far off from Chennai. Rajni, of course, he'll be around. As I said, if you buy books and you're getting a signature. So may I now request Mr. Mauli to please propose the vote of thanks. And after the session is over, a lot of us will be around. If you have individual questions, you could just walk up to them and surely they'll be very happy to answer you. So back to you, Mauli, for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. So that was a glimpse of very interesting careers, whether it was in journalism or in the civil services. And I'm sure many of you could relate, many of you could add to these stories. You have stories of your own. But what I found interesting about today's program was, and I must thank Maithili for that, she was actually the cat among the pigeons. And I liked the way you provoked and got them to come out with a defense. So thank you, Maithili, for being here, being with us today, sharing your experiences. And I'm sure many of them would have been inspired to get into journalism now. Sudden change of career plans. Now we're going to join the Indian Express. Oh, not the Hindu. So thank you very much for being here. Vivek, as usual, has captivated us with his own anecdotes and ran this whole thing so professionally. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Malini is a dear friend and a colleague. She has much more to say, and I'm sure we'll have another session with her over here. She's from Chennai, so we can get her over any time. And her experiences go far beyond the government sector. Many of you don't know that she was also partially, she was responsible for the revival of the, after the Island Affairs went down, she was part of the board. So she has many other stories to tell and share. We'll get her over some other time. Thank you for being with us today. And Rajni, of course. Rajni didn't bring rain this time, no storms, but she took this hall by storm. So let's give her a big hand for this. It's been long coming, but I'm glad that you made it, and this is a session which went off very well. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you more often. Whenever you are here in these parts, we'll surely call you over. When we get our own premises, it'll be more often, so we'll be able to get more and more people into our monthly schedule. So again, let me get back to CIC. The CIC really invites people to come over for these intellectual discussions which we have. We have an eclectic mix of subjects that we talk about, and we debate issues which are of public interest. Next event is on the 16th, and we have Sri Sanjeev Sanyal coming down. He's going to talk about the new revolutionaries, the forgotten revolutionaries, and that will be held at the MOP Vaishnav College. So those of you who are interested, please do come down. He is a member of the Prime Minister's Advisory Council, and I'm sure that is also going to be a cracker of an event. So we hope that we see as many people as we see today, because post-COVID, getting people to come and attend such events has become a big problem for us. So please do come, 16th at the MOP Vaishnav College. We'll be sending out the invites to all of you, and all of you are welcome. This is a public institution. For those of you who have still doubts whether it's a membership only, it is a public philanthropy and all are welcome to attend our programs. So please do come. And we do have a lineup of another brilliant program is coming up next month on the 9th of March, and that would be Anant Nageswaran, the Chief Economic Advisor to the government, who is going to address us, and that would be on the 9th of March. We will let you know the venue in due course of time. So once again, thank you very much, and those of you who want to stay back and interact with the protagonists, the authors, and the participants, please do so, and thank you for coming. Thank you.